Hey everybody, welcome back. We have a guest today. Our neighbor is here, Deanna. She's just quietly sitting over there though. All right, let's see. Milena says she has a dentist appointment, so she's hoping it won't be long and she can join, but she might miss it. Caitlin says hers ends at 3 Central Time, so she'll be there. I don't know if I'll be there first thing, but she is here. Hello. All right, good. Well, excellent. Well, gang, we've come to the last. This is the final reading. So today we'll read this last little bit. There's a short chapter and then the epilogue, and maybe we'll take a look at a couple of things from the appendix. We won't read it all. And then if you guys want to hang out some, we will. Here, let's see who else is here. Lily Mae is here. The Scales family is here. Hi, Matt. So sad this is the last day. I love your book, and Jason, from Neil. Yeah, thanks, Neil. I'm sad too. It'll be nice to get a little bit of a break to not be going every single day. But I've been really enjoying connecting with you all. And we've been doing it a long time. As you see, I've grown a complete goatee just in the last couple of weeks here. Dr. Awesome says, hi, I can't believe the end is here. I know, right? Yep. It has come. The end has come. The end. Yeah. I was thinking back to when I wrote this book. And I can't remember if I've shared this with all of you. I wrote this book. The woman who it's dedicated to is my friend Shasta, who passed away. She was very sick with cancer. And I was writing this book as she was in the process of kind of going through some of the last treatments and things she went through. I wrote a good portion of it the summer she passed. I had gone to stay with her and her mom at her apartment for a couple of weeks, and I wrote a good amount there at that time. And you've seen in the recording there a couple times where I got pretty emotional when I was reading different pieces. Some of that was acting. No, but some of it was just because of there's some scenes in here that are picking up some of what Madeline expresses are things that my friend Shasta had said to me at different times. And this was the first book of mine that Shasta didn't read before, ever. She never read it. We talked a lot through the plot and things. She knew what it was about, but she never read it. So it was a turning point really in my life and my writing career and different things. But anyway, all that to say, there's a lot of emotion when something ends and you're starting something new. Let's see. The Scales family says, we're enjoying chocolate pudding while we listen. That's Hannah. Awesome. Good. I'm glad. My daughter last night, Zoe, made us strawberry shortcakes and strawberry, I don't know what the other things were. I can't eat them anyway. They're made out of eggs. They like egg whites and sugar, and they're like whipped up to look like roses. They look beautiful. I didn't get to eat any though. And the Sims are here. Good. All right, gang. Well, here's the deal. Let me jump in. I'll read. And then if anyone wants to come on air and ask some questions or say anything, I'll give you a link at that time. And if you click on the link, it's going to bring you into sort of almost like a green room, like a place. It won't immediately throw you on air. I'll have to bring you in. You'll see if you choose to come. So be thinking, do you want to come on and show your face and the room you're in and all that stuff and say hello or ask a question or make a comment? You'd be welcome to. And I think I can do up to 6, meaning 5 more than me, screens at a time. I think, but I've never done more than, 1 for a guest. So we'll see. So what's happened. We've come to the crisis moment. And in the end of yesterday's chapter, Madeline returns finally home to her backyard with new friends. Yenel and Shula end up with her, but back kind of where she started, lying on the grass in the backyard of her home, unable to breathe, and leaving Jason and Darius behind in the Sunlit Lands. And that's where we pick up in chapter 36, A New Journey. After the rain, the desert blooms, a Cockney proverb. Even from outside the city, Jason could see the corrupted palace and the way it listed to one side, its holes black against the white stone. In the chaos of the collapsing tower, they had managed to make it out with almost no fighting. The shattering of the tower stone and the subsequent departure of the Karobem had distracted most of the people in the city. Many of the citizens, upon hearing that another skim attack was happening, had barred themselves into their homes. The Knight of the Mirror had ridden out with Jason and Bailea through the southern gate, following Hanali's orders. "It will take some time to put it all back together," the knight said. "The Archon's magic is struggling." "Where were you, anyway?" Jason said, "during the big fight." He was riding the giant bird, the Brewcock, his arms around Bailea's waist. It might have made him blush on another day, but honestly, too much energy was going into making sure he didn't fall off. Delightful Glitter Lady let loose a high-pitched squeak, her tiny head peeking from his pocket. He scratched behind her ears. The knight didn't answer. He had met them halfway down the tower as if summoned and escorted them quickly through the ranks of Elenil. The messenger birds had begun to spread throughout the city by then, passing along the story of the girl who had destroyed the magic that kept her alive. A debate had ignited, the Elenil arguing over whether such a thing was noble or foolish. It wasn't safe in the city for Jason, though, that much was clear. Passions ran too high. Some skim kids had thrown stones at him for not destroying the heart of the skim. An Elenil woman had given him a bouquet for the same reason. Breakbones had met them outside the city. Bailea had advanced on him with her weapon, but he had thrown down his own weapon and explained that he owed a life debt to Jason now. Wanting to make sure he wasn't lying, Jason had commanded him to dance and sing a silly song. When Breakbones assured him he didn't know such a song, Jason had taught him "I'm a Little Teapot," complete with actions, and Breakbones had performed it admirably despite his scowl. Darius had flown ahead to tell the Skim Elders that Jason and Bailea were coming. Breakbones had given Darius the Sword of Years and told him to return it to the Skim Elders. Jason didn't know what sort of welcome would be waiting in the Wasted Lands, but he knew it should be the first step. Of course, Bailea's family was still trying to kill him, and he hadn't told her yet that their engagement was accidental. He wasn't sure he wanted to. He wasn't sure he wanted out of it either. Hanali had disappeared after the events in the garden, but before he went, he had assured Jason he would be fine. He felt certain Thenity wouldn't make a public move against him. The politics of the Elenil are subtler than that, he had said. Galenia had stayed on the Archon's side working her magic, bringing him back to health as best she could. The wound from the Sword of Years, she said, would not heal easily or well. Jason couldn't help but think that reattaching the Archon's severed arm would mean some skim somewhere without a hand. He didn't understand why she would try to heal Thenity when she had been part of the plot to overthrow him. He had asked Hanali before he left. "We are a loyal people," the Elenil said. "Thenity is still the Archon and thus should be cared for and obeyed." Jason didn't get it, but whatever. "When you return," the knight said, "enter through the eastern gate, undetected if you can. You will be safe in Westwind. Send a bird ahead so I can warn you if it is unsafe." He paused and looked toward the west. A messenger bird was flying toward them. The knight held his arm up, and it landed on his wrist. "What word bring you?" the knight asked. "Word from the realm of the Janine," the bird said, "from a young man named Kakoa and a girl named Ruth." Jason almost fell off the Brewcock. What? What did he say?" The bird turned its green head to see Jason more clearly. "They are in danger," the bird said. "They request your help. They warn that the Janine mean to kill the one called Jason and the woman Madeline." Jason groaned. Of course there were more people wanting to kill him. He hoped David had made it safely to Aluvoria. "Why, we don't even know them." "They assassinate those who threaten the balance of magic in the world," the knight said. "They must see your recent actions as a threat." Bailea looked west. "We will be careful. To see more Janine in this part of the world would be strange indeed." Jason slapped his forehead. "Is there anyone not trying to kill me?" "Not I," Bailea said, and she gave Jason a look so loaded with affection that he felt a flush that ran from his face all the way to his toes. "Nor I," said the knight. Breakbones didn't say anything, but he was cranky like that. Delightful Glitter Lady honked her approval. "4," Jason said. "Well, that's a start." They turned the Brewcock southward, and the knight wished them safe journey. When both Breakbones and the knight were out of earshot, Bailea patted Jason's hand gently where it encircled her waist. "Your sister would be proud," she said. You are a man who shares his stories generously. You are honest and kind. Such men are always threatened with death. You honestly scare me so much, Jason said. Bailea turned so her silver eyes were all he could see. She would be proud, she repeated. She turned away again and kicked the bird. As it began to run, she said, as I am proud. Jason held her tighter and let the wind push the water from his eyes. He promised himself that he would be worthy of Bailea's pride, no matter the cost. He did not speak until night fell. Epilogue. To see another is the birth of compassion. From Ronaldo the Wise, a skim legend. At night, Yenel liked to play in the garden. Tonight there was a full moon and the blue light washed over the flowers. It reminded Madeline of the wasted lands, not what it was, but what it could be. She sat wrapped in a blanket in a wheelchair on the crushed seashell path. She held the book Darius had given her, the first edition of The Griffin Under the Stairs, in her lap. She didn't like to be apart from it. It reminded her of him. Shula sat beside her. Without the magic of the sunlit lands, they spoke to one another in French, or increasingly often in Shula's hesitant English. It had been 2 months. Yenel's English came quickly, and Shula was not far behind. Madeline's parents had been astonished, grateful, and disbelieving when they saw her the first night. She had been gone 10 months, they said, and they had begun to believe the worst. They had taken Shula and Yenel in with surprising good grace, though Madeline could see the strain on them. She wasn't able to answer their questions in a way they could grasp. She couldn't explain her absence or her sudden reappearance or her silver scars, the ones that precisely matched the ones on the little girl who showed up with her. Yenel, unless someone looked very closely, appeared human when not in her war skin. Honestly, Shula, a Middle Eastern girl who didn't speak English, had been a harder sell than Yenel for her parents. Does she have a green card? Her mother kept asking in a hushed whisper. When Madeline explained about the sunlit lands, a confused look would cross her parents' face, and they would stop pushing. She heard them whispering, sometimes sharing their strange theories of where she had been, but eventually the gravity of, quote, putting on their happy faces took over. Her mom went back to managing appearances. Her dad went back to work, and things were more or less normal again. Soon they stopped asking questions, whether because they didn't want to or couldn't understand the answers. Madeline didn't know. Yenel was amazed by the house. She kept saying she lived in an Ellenil mansion now. Madeline had tried to correct her at first, but had given up. She wasn't wrong, Madeline had realized. She couldn't breathe freely anymore. She saw now that her family, her upbringing, she was more like the Ellenil than the Skim, which wasn't bad. It wasn't wrong, but she was looking at her life now, her privileges and power and wealth in a new way. She was looking for those places where she could breathe only because others were holding their breath. And she planned to take a sword to each and every place she discovered. Yenel bounded up through the moonlight, delighted at some treasure she had found. She placed it in Madeline's hand. What is it called? A bottle cap, Madeline said. Bottle cap, Yenel repeated and giggled. Bottle cap, she shouted. Bottle cap, bottle cap. She danced into the garden, laughing and shouting, Chase, Shula, chase. Shula jumped up, running after her into the garden. Here I come. Madeline loved to see Yenel playing. Some nights, Yenel woke from nightmares. Some nights, she couldn't sleep for weeping. Shula slept with her and sang to her. Madeline's own mother went in to comfort Yenel some nights, a strange motherly action Madeline couldn't remember her mom ever doing for her. She's a dear girl and knows the value of a good bottle cap. The garden lady stood beside Madeline, her broom-like hair bursting out from her floral-fringed hat. Madeline smiled and moved her fingers in a tiny wave. She didn't use the energy to speak. She heard Shula and Yenel on the other side of the flowers singing a Skim lullaby, which Yenel often hummed to herself. She had taught it to Madeline and Shula. Do not cry in the darkness, but follow the small, bright star. The old woman grunted and rearranged her hat. I owe you a favor yet, dear. I'm not the kind who leaves a favor unfulfilled. What would you like? Silver and gold? Your breath back again? Anything in my power, child. Ask and I'll give it. Madeline shook her head. She knew the cost now. She couldn't ask for magic that came at another's expense. Sit beside me, Madeline said. Tell me about the sunlit lands. Tell me about my friends. Tell me a story about them. Oh, that I can do, my dear, that I can do. The garden lady tucked Madeline's blanket in around her shoulders and sat in Shula's chair. She sat there long into the night while Yeno played in the garden and told her everything her friends had been doing in the sunlit lands. And Madeline closed her eyes and was happy. The end. I had a decent number of friends friends and readers write me and say, what happened at the end there? Is Madeline alive or dead? And I said, oh, wait for the second book. I was kind of asked if I would make it a little clearer when we were going through edits, and I said, I don't think I will. Let's see. What stories shall we take out of the appendix? Let me take a quick look here. Oh, I think we'll stay away from most of the poetry and things like that. Tell you what, let's pick one of the stories here. I think we can do either. Uh-oh. This is just me flipping around a lot. Let's do either The Three Gifts of the Peasant King. It's a short one. Or Ronaldo the Wise. Also short, just a touch longer. Which do you want? Ronaldo the Wise or The Three Gifts of the Peasant King? I'll let you guys vote real quick. Three Gifts of the Peasant King or Ronaldo the Wise. Both are skim legends that are in the back here. Or if you don't care either way, that's fine. Then I'll just pick. Okay, Kirk says Three Gifts. I like that one. Any other votes? Everyone's fine with Three Gifts? Going once? Going twice? All right. Three Gifts it is. The Three Gifts of the Peasant King, a skim legend. Here we go. A great while ago, when the world was full of wonders, there lived a wealthy king. He ate from golden plates upon a golden table. The floor of his throne room was polished silver, and his throne was studded with rare jewels. He often threw lavish banquets for his friends. Entire feasts worth of food would go to the dogs, for the guests could not eat it all. He was called King Franklin, and he was deeply unhappy. For although he was rich, his subjects looked on him with disdain. It came to pass that King Franklin began to hear tales of a strange king in a far country, a man beloved by all his subjects. The peasant king, as he was called, had neither gold nor crown, but King Franklin decided he must see this strange man who was praised by so many tongues. So Franklin disguised himself as a servant and traveled through the deep forest, over the snowy mountains, and across the wide sea. And he brought with him 3 gifts for the peasant king: a fine silk cape, a diamond the size of a man's fist, and a great disk of gold to fashion a royal table. When at last King Franklin found the peasant king, he was surprised to find him in a humble barn, where he sat upon a throne made of hay. Upon his brow he wore a circlet of holly, and his scepter was a piece of polished oak. Franklin, in his disguise as a royal servant, presented the gifts he had brought to the peasant king, explaining they were from his master, good King Franklin. Then he said, I have traveled far to ask the secret of your great glory, but I stand before you now and see that a farmer in my master's land is wealthier than you. The peasant king stroked his beard, and thought for some time. At last he said, Tell me, O servant, did you see many of my subjects in your travels? Did they seem fortunate, more fortunate than those in your land? King Franklin replied, No more fortunate than those of other lands, though happier in their misfortune. I saw a woman who sang as she slopped the pigs, though she had no apron to cover her dress. A scribe laughed to see his papers blown by the wind. A man whistled a tune when he saw his wagon wheel had broken. The peasant king laughed to hear this fine report and called for the woman, the scribe, and the wagoner. When they arrived, he greeted them each with a kiss upon the cheek. To the woman he said, "Good King Franklin has sent you this apron from across the wide sea," and he gave her the fine silk cape. Then he gave the scribe the diamond the size of a man's fist and said, "Good King Franklin has sent you this paperweight from over the snowy mountains." Lastly, he rolled the golden tabletop to the wagoner and said, "Through the deep forest, good King Franklin has sent you this sturdy wagon wheel." All three went away glad, thanking the peasant king and praising the kindness and foresight of good King Franklin. The peasant king said, "The glory of a king comes from neither wealth nor finery, but from the well-being of his people. Now, I shall send you away with 3 gifts: a flask of local wine, a loaf of thick brown bread, and a letter for King Franklin, which holds the secret to the great glory of the peasant king." Then the peasant king sent King Franklin on his way. So King Franklin traveled across the wide sea, over the snowy mountains, and through the deep forest. When he had bathed and dressed again in his royal robes and returned to his grand throne room, King Franklin set out the wine and bread and opened the letter from the peasant king. It contained only these words: "A true king must not pretend to be a servant, but must rather become one." So too, this story bears 3 gifts: one for the storyteller, one for the hearer, and one for the heart which understands. There you go. All right. I had so much fun writing all these things in the back. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to invite you in now. Just a moment. I'm going to put a link in the comments here with that you can click on if you want to come join us live. If you don't want to, that's fine. You're welcome, but it's not required. There you go. And if a couple of you want to come in, or a bunch of you, that's fine. And then we'll chat for a little bit. And when we're done, I'll read the last thing, which is a poem from the Johnnine people, a poem of departure, of blessing to those who are leaving. And we'll end with that. So yeah, somebody come join me here. And or if nobody wants to join, it's okay. Just, oh, here comes somebody. Here she comes. All right. There's Joanna. Hey there. Hey. Welcome. That's Lily Me, for those who are wondering. There she is. Hey there. How's it going?
Hey, I need to figure out which window I need open here.
Oh, it should say StreamYard.com should be the window. Oh, the Scales family want to know if I will read the other two. Sure, I'll do that.
Okay.
Chat for a minute. I can do that.
So that's still on. Okay, I just closed the YouTube window because I was getting a weird echo.
Oh, there you go. All right, so Scales family, sure, I can read the other one also. And then poor Dr. Awesome, her internet is cutting out and lagging, so she's not going to jump in. Womp womp. Oh, I should put her comment up here so you guys can see it. There it is. Aw, Dr. Awesome. That's sad. Not awesome internet. Joanna, you got a question, comment, thought? Angry disagreement?
I need to go back and actually read all those stories in the back. I never read them. And now
you did it? Oh,
no. Great. No.
There's
about reading and stuff.
There's little clues in the back in those stories about some things that happen in the later books. Like I don't think you would see them or notice them until you read them all and go back through. But yeah, there's little things that are revealed even in book 3 that I was reading in the back of this, and I was like, oh, that's a little bit of a spoiler. Like you could put it together potentially.
Okay, I need to read them. I'll be like, oh, there's all of the stuff for book 2.
Yep, exactly. So good. Well, I'm so pleased you've been able to join us through this. It's been really fun.
It's been great. Thank you.
So, we got a couple more comments here. Kirk says, this has been absolutely wonderful, and I love you very much. Kirk, I love you too, bro. And I'm looking forward to when we're allowed to get together again. I just saw that my county is going to phase 2 starting today. So,
yay!
Starting to be allowed to see people. So that'd be good. Let's see. Scales family can't join us on video because they can't listen. They don't have enough headphones. Well, that I get it. That's true. Well, we can do a Scales family video call sometime. We'll catch up a little. Caitlin says, when I write, I like to imagine what kind of pets my characters would have. What kind of pet people do you think your characters are? For example, I think Madeline would be a cat person and Jason would be a dog person. That's a great question. I have this weakness of wanting to provide as many new cute little animals in each story as I can. So, we already have a baby rhino unicorn, and I don't want to give too many spoilers, but I'll say in the third book, there's a brief appearance of Yenel's new pet that is adorable and hilarious and has a funny name that I was like, oh, I should have brought this thing in sooner. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Joanna? Who do you think Madeline and Jason are dog or cat people?
I think that's actually a pretty good analysis. Yeah, that is, I mean, okay, I feel like Jason would be an any animal person.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely see Madeline being a cat person.
I could see that. Yeah, she's pretty.
Bailey is definitely a dog person.
Well, there you go. Oh, that's interesting.
So Jason and Bailey will just have to get a dog, assuming everything goes
when it goes the way everyone wants it to. Who knows? You never know.
I'm believing this by faith. That
I gotta say the one I don't want to give spoilers for the second book if people haven't read it, but there's a certain event there that is by far I get the most hate mail about related to Jason and Bailey.
That's fair. Okay, is it a spoiler to say that the middle story in a trilogy basically ends in all of the worst places?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's sort of required.
I don't know if I don't know if it counts as a cliffhanger, but it is definitely everyone is in a rough place by the end of the second book for sure. Let's see. The Scales family want to know, how did you choose the sickness that Madeline has? So I was looking for something that was realistic that a teenager could get, and something that's not necessarily fatal, but could be, and it needed to be relatively debilitating. I didn't want to do cancer or something like that, which would have been an opportunity, a possibility. And I thought symbolically something that was dealing with breath would be really important, just because it goes directly to her abilities to do different things. And with the book being a lot about privilege and power, I wanted Madeline in many ways of the human characters has the most privilege and power of anybody. She is from a wealthy family. She gets good grades. She's white, well-liked, athletic, like all these things. So, but privilege is much more complicated than that, right? That her privilege compared to mine, who probably has less money than her family, although I'm a man, you start putting all these in. I have some privilege in places she doesn't, which is my health. So I wanted to mess with that a little bit. So it needed to be something that wasn't just an inconvenience or she felt weak sometime, but something that had become a part of her. So this particular lung disease is relatively rare in young people. Someone who was watching with us, and I think maybe Deborah, who's watching, I think, along with us later now instead of live, actually has this disease. It's not always fatal, but what it is just a progressive scarring of lung tissue, and you don't get the use of that lung tissue back. And obviously Madeline's advanced a little faster than is normal. And the second book talks about that and why some of the reasons that might be, actually. So it's a little wrapped up in the Sunlit Lands, even that. But yeah, I looked around a while to find that. And I talked to a couple people, a couple doctors, wrote a few people that had some experience and read up on it. So obviously I didn't get into, anytime you're dealing with a real life disease in fiction, you have to be really careful. You don't want people who have it to read it and go like, that's not how it works, or feel offended or things like that. But yeah, anyway, so that's how I chose it. Kirk is laughing at my spoilers. I'm trying not to do spoilers, but I keep forgetting that some people haven't read this the book yet. Caitlin says she feels like Breakbones would be a bird person.
A little teeny bird person, like the ones where they're like the little tiny birds that then like the kind of people that'll then like kiss them on the beak.
Yeah, exactly. I love that idea. He's a softie at the end of the day. You wouldn't know it for all the threatening to kill and murder everyone. But he loves everyone.
To Jason.
Okay, Joanna, real talk. There's a lot of things that pay off in the second book that you didn't even know from the first book, right? Like, yeah, okay.
That was one I did not like. That was one that
one you saw coming
in the back of my head for a really long time. But
yeah. Oh boy. Well, yeah. Any other thoughts, Joanna?
I'm excited for the third one. I'm not sure where I do not have any good guesses of where you're going with Darius's story.
Oh.
Like I that's the one where I am the most like I really don't know with the various like conflicts and stuff and the necromancers, those horrible evil people. That might have been my favorite thing from the second book.
Okay, so I will say this. Darius in the third book, I don't want to give anything major away at all, but there's a pretty major twist for Darius that comes in the first third of the book that is absolutely telegraphed in the first and second. I don't think you'll see it coming till you read it, but then you'll be like, hey, it was set up. So the Scales family say, thank you for being careful with the spoilers. This was their first time, quote, reading the book. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll stay away from the second book. We'll not make comments because I love a lot of things about the second book. There's some fun stuff. One of the things I love about these stories is the relationships between the characters. In a lot of young adult novels, some of the conflict is driven by the characters disliking each other in some way. So I really love that these people all, not like they never get on each other's nerves, but they all love each other. And I think that's really fun. Like something I've really enjoyed about the books and is one of the things that makes me sad about the third one being written now. It's that, my kids have their favorites that they're planning spin-offs for, but Zoe's chanting Jason over there. Everybody loves Jason.
I mean, Jason, yeah.
Kirk is excited for book 3. Caitlin says book 3 is going to be bittersweet because I can't wait to see how it goes. There's Micah, but I don't want it to end. Micah's waving hello.
Hi, Micah.
All right, friends. Well, I think Joanna, I might pull you off the stream here, and then I will read I'll read that other short story, the Skim Legend, from the back, and then I'll read the little parting song from the John Mean. I'm not going to sing it because I don't know.
Right.
People are offended here that I'm not singing it, but I don't know the tune.
I support them now. I think you should sing it. Or at least get them.
Well, they're in here going, well, you wrote it. Thanks, Deanna.
Make them make up the tune.
Yeah, I'm going to have them come over here and sing it. Okay, thanks for coming on with me, Joanna. Okay, here we go, everybody. Here's so we'll do the second Peasant King story here. This is about Rinaldo the Wise. It's a Skim legend as well. The Skim, by the way, when they tell a story, just like many of us from Western culture would say once upon a time, and we end with and they all lived happily ever after, typically, that they have a traditional way of doing their stories too, that they'll start with a great while ago and they'll say what was so great. So how long ago it was, right? So the last one was when the world was full of wonders. This one starts a similar way. And in the same way, it ends with the 3 gifts. The Skim are big about gifts in storytelling. So Rinaldo the Wise. A great while ago, when the summers of this land could still be counted by those with long memories, a man named Rinaldo walked the paths of the world. Hated and despised by all he met, Rinaldo returned the hatred of his neighbor with vigor. Now, in those days, the peasant king ruled. The peasant king sent out a decree into all the land telling his subjects he wished to increase the happiness of all his people. And so he would give each subject a boon of their choosing: magic or money, fortune or fame, long life or lilies. No request, either small or large, would be turned away, so long as it be not evil. Ronaldo thought for 8 days and 7 nights of what might bring him happiness, but the only boons he imagined would give him pleasure were misfortunes for his neighbors. He knew the peasant king would not grant him his wish if he said, "Make old Mrs. Gaither's goats give sour milk," or "Tear the thatch off Mr. Havel's hut," or even "Take away the tongue of that calamitous child down the lane." The day came for his audience with the peasant king, and Ronaldo dressed in his finest clothes and walked to the woods, where the king sat upon a stone, a sprig of holly wrapped around his forehead. He was playing a merry tune on a simple flute. "This," said the peasant king, "is the flute of joy. Blow into it, and such joy shall fill your heart that you will be at peace with all people and with the world. I have made it, dear Ronaldo, for you. For often I have passed by your home and seen you scowling in your chair." The peasant king held out the lovely gift, but Ronaldo would have none of it. "Such a gift is too fine for me," said Ronaldo. "Now, Highness, you said you would grant any boon, so long as it is not evil. Have I heard it right? For I would not speak and have you deny me. I will not curse a person or animal, nor take away their free will to please you." "Not even to make a goat's milk sour?" Ronaldo asked hopefully, for the bleating and stench of Mrs. Gaither's goats truly vexed him. The peasant king laughed and said, "Truly not," and played upon his flute of joy. The whole wood filled with dancing and laughter. The birds sang, the rabbits danced, the foxes stopped their hunting and smiled. Ronaldo only frowned. "My wish, then," said Ronaldo, "is to see the coming death of every person in the land." For he thought to himself, to know the death of a person is to have great power over them. Besides, it might please him to see his neighbors and enemies and be able to say to himself, "But 6 months more, and that one shall be gone. But a few years for that one. Ha! She shall be no bother after next Thursday." The peasant king stopped his playing, and the whole wood fell silent. "It is not an evil gift," said the king, "though it is requested with evil intent." "You've given your word," Ronaldo reminded him. "Indeed," said the peasant king, "I shall grant your wish, and something more. Not only the time of death shall you see, but also the cause." Elated, Ronaldo bowed low to the king and walked backward from his presence. The joyful playing did not start again until Ronaldo set foot upon the road, which was a great relief. He hurried home to try his new skill. He came first to Mrs. Gaither's thatched hut. The stench of her goats grew ever greater. Just last week he had convinced her to move her flock to the east side of her property, for on the west side their stench lived always in his nostrils. She complained that the east side was craggy and dangerous, but every day he wheedled and complained until at last she relented. The old woman came out of the hut, and the moment he saw her, Ronaldo knew her death. In 2 years' time, she would take her goats out in the rain and slip upon the craggy rocks of her eastern property and break her hip. She would die within 6 weeks, weakened and alone. "Serves her right," Ronaldo said to himself, "for keeping such filthy animals." He continued on to Mr. Havel's hut and knocked upon his door. For many years, he and Mr. Havel had feuded about their property line. The great stones separating their property would move in the night, sometimes because Mr. Havel moved them, and sometimes because Ronaldo moved them. Neither could remember the true property lines any longer. Ronaldo saw his end, too. Just 1 year hence, he would catch a sickness during a storm. His poorly thatched roof, which Ronaldo often called an eyesore, would not keep out the rain, and he would die, feverish and alone. "Serves him right," Ronaldo said to himself, "for taking such poor care of his home." He continued on to find a loud-mouthed child who shouted and screamed day and night, sometimes in joy, sometimes in anger. The boy shouted whether happy or sad, and could keep neither his opinions to himself nor his voice low. Ronaldo gasped. the boy, a child of only 7 summers, would die in 1 week's time. And he would die trying to save Ronaldo from drowning in the pond. Ronaldo liked to swim on crisp summer mornings, and next week he would sink from a leg cramp. The boy would charge into the water to save him and would succeed, but at the cost of his own life. No more would Ronaldo hear the boy's booming voice as he chased the geese. No more his disappointed cries when his mother called him to dinner. Never again the echoing crow of the boy emulating the morning rooster. All this because the boy would try to save his melancholy neighbor, the one who barely said hello and often complained that the boy was too loud. Ronaldo's heart broke as if struck by a great hammer. He hurried to the pond and stared at the cool, placid water, and it was there that he saw his own death, sitting in a chair upon his porch many years hence, bitter, angry, and alone. He hurried back to the peasant king and begged for another audience. He fell on his knees in the great king's presence and cried, "O Majesty, take away this curse. Give me instead a new boon." "What boon is that?" the king asked. "Majesty, I ask only this. Let the boy live a long and happy life. He does not deserve to end his life in such a way." The king gave him a look of great pity and said in the archaic way of knights and kings, "Stay thou out of the water, Ronaldo." Ronaldo thanked the king and hurried home, determined not to swim in the pond that week. But was this enough to change the boy's future? He saw the boy and was relieved to see him living until the age of 23, when he would die in battle. There was time to work on that, but for now he hurried to Mr. Havel's house and in a flurry of activity and without a single complaint rethatched his roof. Then he was off to Mrs. Gaither's house, where he told her, "Live a long life, move your goats back between our houses," which she did. That night he sat upon his porch smoking his pipe, when the peasant king came along playing his flute softly in the moonlight. The peasant king sat on the porch with crossed legs and did not use a chair, for the peasant king would not sit on a chair fashioned by the hands of a living being. "Has your boon brought you happiness?" the peasant king asked. Ronaldo thought on this for a time, puffing upon his pipe. "We have more in common than we have differences," Ronaldo said at last. "In the face of death, these grievances with my neighbors seem petty." "A wise observation," the peasant king said. "You and your neighbors shall all be better for it. Now, I think, this flute is yours, for it requires a loving heart to play it." Ronaldo accepted it gladly, and in the years to come, he became known as Ronaldo the Wise, for he seemed to know the greatest needs of his neighbors, and all who knew him lived long and healthy lives. Many were the nights where Ronaldo sat upon his porch and played his flute, and the people of the village shed their cares and kicked up their heels. When he was very old, the whole village came to his bedside. His final words, we are told, were these: "To see another is the birth of compassion. Compassion is a seed of love. Love comes hand in hand with joy. So little children, love one another, that your joy may be complete." So too, this story brings 3 boons: one for the storyteller, one for the hearer, and one for the heart which understands. And now, lastly, friends, thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for today, making it special, coming and hanging out, asking some questions. I appreciate it. For all those who are watching later, thank you. Thank you for joining us and walking through this. And now we come to The Parting. It's a traditional song of farewell for honored visitors from the Johnny and the Shark people, who you don't get to know much until the second book. Traditional farewell for honored visitors. Here are the lyrics. "Your arrival, how like the sunrise, when the cool eastern light shimmers upon the morning waves. In the midday, the birds sang, Fish jumped, their scales aflame. Water sparkled in our cupped hands. We have paddled alongside you, but here our journeys part. We are an island, you an ocean stream. When the sun departs, she is most beautiful. O western waters, shine. Peace to you. Come again, our blessed guest, beloved friend, charming one. Farewell. Until once more, the cool eastern light shimmers upon the morning waves. Thanks, everyone. Peace to you. I'll talk to you soon.